Hey everyone, Cleo here, and today we are talking about what I've been reading so far in the month of May. So it's already time to check in with my TBR. This was a little bit of a different month compared to most when it comes to the amount of books that I put on my TBR. In 2021, I've always been putting 5 books on my TBR, and in principle I did the same this month. However, I also kind of mentioned 2 extra books that I want to get around to. So in principle, I have an ideal TBR of 7 books this month. So when it comes to these sort of 5 basic books to my TBR, I am just under the midway point. I have read 2 out of the 5. I did read the 2 shorter ones, so we are a little bit more behind than just under half. And when it comes to my 7 book TBR, that is exactly the same situation. I've read 3 out of 7. I've read some of the shorter ones. There is still one of the more shorter ones that is left on there, but there are mainly then 2, 3 big books still there. So first up, books that I've already finished at this point in the month. Let's go through these chronologically. I think I've got the correct order. So first up, I finished Tokyo Ueno Station by Yu Miri. So this is the first book that I picked up this month, and I had a mixed experience with this one. I also talk about this one in my book recommending Japanese fiction, so do check that one out if you're interested in more Japanese literature. I did overall enjoy this one, and I do think it's a very important read. However, at the time in which I was reading it, a lot of times I wasn't necessarily super engaged with it because I kind of felt like I was missing a lot of the background to it. I know it's a book that goes into a lot of criticism of Japanese society, of the sort of establishment of the imperial family, and the way in which they are governing the country. However, I was missing a lot of that. I didn't have enough of the background on the way in which the political landscape is in Japan to sometimes be able to catch on to those things. However, this book does end up with 2 author's notes and a translator's note, and those will definitely fill in the gaps. So if you're going through this one, I would definitely highly encourage you to read those as well, to get more of the full background to this story and to understand more of all the things that this book is diving into and all the things that this book is kind of criticizing, that this book wants to bring to the surface. So this is a book in which our protagonist is basically somebody who has passed away. His spirit is kind of haunting his last place of residence, which was Ueno Station Park, which is apparently a park in Tokyo where a lot of homeless people find permanent residence. And so he was one of those homeless that ended up in Ueno Station. And so we will be observing the people there and observing the situations in which these people have to live their lives, as well as looking back on his past, looking back at how he ended up in Ueno Station Park. This is very much a story told from a very specific perspective, and it will give us an insight into a way of life that most of us don't really have a lot of understanding of, or a way of life that isn't often delved into, or that isn't often seen in such an intimate light, as well as going into the very intimate, very personal story of Kazu and his past. He did have a family, he had a family he was working for, and so we do see that he had these strings, these connections, and so when we know that he ended up in Ueno Station Park on his own, that automatically creates that sort of a suspense or that sort of mystery surrounding his past. And there are heartbreaking moments to this book, heartbreaking moments to his personal life, heartbreaking moments to the realization of how these homeless people are treated, and how whenever the imperial family will visit the sort of palace or something that is neighboring Ueno Station Park, I think, they will remove the homeless people there in order for, the imperial family to not be exposed to them, for example. So, and that is also part of the criticism that is going into it, the fact that leading up to the Olympic Games, to the Tokyo Olympic Games, a lot of those homeless people have also been removed again in order for, foreign people who will be visiting there to not be exposed to them. And when you read this story and then get the combination of that story and that link that you have built with the character, with his situation, to the stories of real life events taking place in Ueno Station Park, but also real life events that feed into the background of this story, that just brings the entire story home and just really made me connect to the story, really made me understand the full scope of what was in this book. And so I would actually really like to reread it now that I do know the sort of overarching story, the story arc that overarches the individual experience that Kazuo has led. The second book that I finished is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. So Ishiguro does have Japanese origins, but his writing is more considered British literature because I think he moved to Britain when he was like 6 or something like that. But so Japanese British literature. So Kazuo Ishiguro is the writer of one book that I've read before, which is Never Let Me Go, and this book did give me major Never Let Me Go vibes because it does have part of that speculative edge that Never Let Me Go has, and it also has that aspect of the unreliable narrator, which apparently, having seen a few videos of people who have read more Ishiguro, is very typical for his work. So in Clara and the Sun we are following an artificial friend called Clara. So in this world we have artificial robots who are being created. They're called artificial friends because their goal is kind of to accompany young children, young teenagers as they grow up and to kind of help support them in their needs. And Clara at the beginning of this story is just waiting around in the store for somebody to choose her. It is a very interesting book. It does interesting things when it comes to artificial intelligence as well, and it creates a sort of like cult surrounding the sun because for Clara, the sun is the force that is giving them power. You know, if they haven't been exposed to the sun for a while, they feel weak. And so the sun is this sort of, takes on this sort of religious aspect within this book, which is a very interesting way to look at artificial intelligence and to look at that boundary between artificial intelligence and humanity. Clara will often feel so human within this world, while at the same time we do get insight into things that make her different from human beings, the way in which her perspective or the way in which her brain is functioning really do stand out within this book and give you a very interesting view on how she sees the world. And so for a big part of this book there is also a lot of mystery surrounding what is happening with the humans within this book. And for a very long time I was unsure whether this was just because of the perspective, because of the fact that we were seeing human life through the perspective of an artificial friend. So do these things just look weird, or do these things just look mysterious because the artificial friend isn't fully able to understand what is taking place? Or have there really been changes in this world that, you know, we are trying to pick up on now? And that element of mystery definitely carried me through, and I will say that that was also my biggest disappointment with this one, is that when that element of mystery is kind of solved, is kind of figured out, I did feel like not a whole lot was done with that anymore at that point in time, and that, you know, this story, I was kind of expecting some big reveal that would change my entire perspective of what had been taking place within that book so far, and that didn't really happen. However, regardless of that, I think it is a gorgeous read. It does a whole lot about the boundaries of artificial intelligence and humanity, as I said before, as well as, you know, scientific discovery. How far should we go? How far can we ethically go with these sort of inventions that we are creating? One of the things that we are exploring is the sort of like boundary of love. How far do we go for love? And there are certain choices, there's certain paths being taken here out of love that will definitely spark a debate. Is that too far? Is that person taking her love for this other person too far by going that route? Or is this just something that is in our future, for example? So I definitely enjoyed it a lot. I think the writing style was great. The unreliable narrator is always a great way to get me sucked into a story, to get me trying to figure out what are the things that we are missing because of this perspective, for example. But, you know, some of my initial excitement with this book kind of dwindled with the fact that the plot doesn't like end on a crescendo or something like that. It definitely does kind of more fizzle out, and for me endings really make or break a book. So it didn't break this book, but it does have an impact on my overall rating or overall viewpoint on this book after having finished it. And that can be said the other way around for this one. So Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Tsujimura is a book that I finished yesterday. So on the 15th, at the midway point of the month, I finished this one. This is one of the books on my extended TBR, so in principle it does not count for my fixed 5-book TBR. And this is a new release. It came out at the end of April. It is a translated work from Japanese, so another Japanese work of fiction within this video. Lonely Castle in the Mirror is basically sort of like The Breakfast Club meets Portal Fantasy, but definitely more The Breakfast Club. So this is a story all about 7 kids who basically all have dropped out of high school or all are not going to school because of circumstances. We mainly see the circumstances of our protagonist, Kokoro, who does not go to school because of some cases of severe bullying. And one day the mirror in her room lights up and she transports into this castle where she meets 6 other kids in the same circumstances, and all of them are given the indication that there is a key hidden within the castle. The person who finds the key and opens up a magical room will be granted a wish. Now that is the premise that we are given, and based off of that premise, I think a lot of people will get the wrong idea about what this book is. This book is not some sort of magic quest to find that key. Most of the pages in this book are not dedicated to the kids actually trying to find the key at all. It will definitely be a lot more of an emotional story, a very much more character-driven story than it actually goes into that sort of part of the premise. And that is also my main problem to some extent with it, because I do feel like while I liked that focus on the individual, on the characters, on Kokoro's anxiety about stepping out into the world, the anxiety of the possibility of classmates of her seeing her and things like that, and the way in which these different kids who we don't really know what their background is, we don't really know why they don't go to school, we still feel that they share this experience, that they share this hardship, and the relationships that are building between them definitely are also a major factor to this book. But I feel like that part of the book should have been toned down a little bit, should have been edited down a little bit, because I definitely feel like there's a huge lull within the middle of this book, a huge section of this book in which not a whole lot is happening, and as a result I kind of had to struggle through it for a big part of this book. I think mainly like for 5 days or something I was only able to read like 30 pages a day, whereas I usually read about 100 pages a day, because I was just not feeling it. And it could just be that I'm just not feeling reading at all at the moment. But then yesterday when I got to a certain passage within this book, and when we got back to sort of like forward motion when it comes to that premise, I did all of a sudden finish it in one go. So I do definitely think that there is a little bit of a lull towards the middle section of the book that I think could have been handled better, that could have been edited down a little bit in order for the story to flow forward a little bit more. But overall the ending of this book really pushed it up for me. So as I said with the previous one, endings have such a big impact on my reading experience, and so I was just thinking it to be quite average before getting to those final 80 pages, but those final 80 pages definitely did drive the story home for me, did connect all of the dots. And even though I had kind of spoiled myself for an element to that ending, so I already knew where the story was going to, there were a lot of things when it comes to that ending that I had not been spoiled for yet, and that I also did not see coming. And so I really loved the way in which all of these elements were combining towards the ending, and the way in which you can kind of reread this book knowing the sort of reveals of the ending, and to read the book in a different way is definitely something that I always like. So I definitely think it is worthwhile. It definitely dives into a lot of elements about Japanese society and about the way in which bullying especially is a big topic within Japan, and so it definitely dives into difficulties of Japanese school life. So I think it says at the back that they score the second lowest when it comes to sort of like child mental health compared to other sort of like countries that have the same sort of economic status as Japan does. And so that is what this story will be diving into. So those are the 3 books that I finished at this point in time. I am also a third of the way through a 4th one, which is The House of Always by Jen Lyons. I have not yet received my physical copy yet, but I do have access to the ARC. This book came out on the 13th of May. I am buddy reading it with Sarah from Voyage Through Words. And so we started, I think, on the 13th as well, or maybe even the 12th already, because apparently the audiobook was out earlier than the actual physical book was released, and so we could start it a little bit sooner. And so I am at this point 1/3 of the way through. I cannot say too much about this because this is the 4th book in a series. So this is the 4th book in A Chorus of Dragons, which is an epic fantasy series. Basically the best thing about this book is all the representation. There is so much LGBTQIA plus representation in it. Basically a story about a disaster guy who, when you think he couldn't have fucked it up even more. He just goes on and fucks it up even more. Great thing with the series is also that you don't just have the main character that is bisexual in this case. You don't just have the main character who has LGBTQIA plus representation. There is just so much in there. There is so much in there from the beginning. There's so much being added still. I don't even know whether it is anybody in this story at this point in time who isn't on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum, to say it like that, because there is just so much representation in there, which is absolutely amazing. Apart from that, there is a great structure to this story. I really love the structural element, which is the element that drew me in at first, which is the reason why I was immediately invested in this story. So it is basically a complex structural story told in sort of like two timelines. A lot of times there is a sort of like frame story, and then there's a story within a story, and we are popping back and forth between those two, because basically the frame story takes place further in the future, and it's basically two people who will be alternating their storytelling, and that is then the story within the story, which is kind of the history leading up to that point. And within the fourth one, we do something very interesting with that structure, which I cannot dive into because of spoilers. But so yeah, the third one really ended in a way that was like, what? It really reset the stakes, reset the way in which the story was going to evolve, and so the fourth one so far has been a wild ride. So there's a lot that is unclear, there's a lot that's like, huh, what's happening there? There's a lot of subtle hints and things like that, as well as some characters that we haven't met up with in 2 books time, for example, that we've only seen in the first book, that we are now reintroduced to, so we're kind of getting to see what they've been up to in the meantime. And so have been really enjoying it so far. We'll be continuing with that one, hoping to finish it by the end of this week that is coming up now, so going into the final week without that one, that's kind of my goal. I did also start another book yesterday. I started The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. I'm like nowhere in this book. You probably cannot even see my bookmark because I'm that far, because I'm not that far in. But so The Hero of Ages is the third book in Mistborn Era 1. So I am rereading a lot of the Cosmere, this one being part of it. And then after I've reread this one, I can finally dive into sort of like Mistborn Secret History and Mistborn Era 1, Mistborn Era 2, which I've never read before. So Mistborn is a epic high fantasy, basically a heist plot with the highest of stakes, because the heist is basically overthrowing the final empire, overthrowing the Lord Ruler, who has basically dominated this world for the past thousands of years. Any type of rebellion has been squashed brutally, and so our crew is going to try and overthrow this empire, going to try and stage a rebellion. One of the main selling points for this series is its magic system. This is also part of the reason why I always try to encourage people to start with Mistborn when they want to dive into Brandon Sanderson, because it is the book in which I feel like his magic system shines the most. In this one, we start off with a magic system called Elemancy, which is a magic system based off of metals. Consuming sort of like flakes of metals gives you access to magical powers. You either have access to one or you have access to all of them, in which case you are a Mistborn. Throughout the book and this series, we will definitely be exploring that magic system a whole lot more. There's very cool ways in which you can use that sort of basic idea of magic system, and a lot of innovation that happens within it as well as looking at some other magic systems, some other creatures within this world that have access to magical powers that aren't necessarily all that visible to the outside world at the beginning of the story, the way that it's presented to us at the beginning in any case. So really love this series and have really been enjoying my time with the first 2 so far. So I just started this one. You can expect another spoiler-filled reading vlog for Hero of Ages soon. Another brief mention is a book that I am reading, but that's for a secret project. I am very close to finishing it at this point in time, so that will also be finished this month, which means that I have another physical book off of my shelf soon. And then there are still 2 books that I need to even start. One of them is for my Essential 5 book TBR, and the other one is sort of like the 7 book on there, and I don't really see it happening anymore. I still want to. My kind of ideal goal is for me to finish The House of Always and Hero of Ages in the week that is to come now, so in the week up until the 23rd, I guess, and then hopefully be able to read the final 2 in that final week. But one of these is just humongous. I'm thinking it's gonna have to go to June. But so first up, a shorter one, which is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is also going to be a reread, and actually I do also have access to the audiobook for this one, but that is still actually 17 hours long, so it's not as short neither, but it is under 400 pages. It shouldn't give me too much problem, but I don't know, I don't think I can still fit it in next week, so it will have to be for the final week of May, meaning that I'm gonna have to combine this one with the next one, and so I don't think I can do both. And so that final book has already arrived at this point, and that is Master Artificer by Justin Call, second book in the Silent God series. I finished Master of Sorrows last month, immediately wanted to dive into this one, and I still do immediately want to dive into this one. I just want to script my Master of Sorrows Disability and Fantasy video before I dive into this one so that I don't mix the two, and as I said, I don't know whether I'll have time. This is a humongous book. It is like 800 pages long. Initially I thought it was going to be over 1,000. It is 800 pages long within this edition, luckily, but that's still humongous. That is still the same length as Hero of Ages, so still having to finish two 800-page books at this point in time within a month. I don't think it's feasible, but we'll see what ends up happening. I definitely do want to still get a head start on it and hopefully like get halfway through it or something within this month, and then just finish the second half within the first week of June or something like that. But I'm not entirely sure I'll be able to do that even. So we'll have to see how the remainder of the month is going to go. I definitely don't foresee any problems finishing my 5-book CBR, but this 7th one might be a problem. And so yeah, there you have it. That's where we are at this point in time. So as I said, in principle, a little bit behind. Now I do know that when it comes to Mistborn, for example, I'm usually flying through them because of my excitement for rereading the series, so I don't really foresee a problem finishing that by the end of next week. No problem neither with the House of Always. I would probably also be perfectly fine finishing that one by the end of the week. My goal is actually to get to the halfway point today, and so I will have no problems fitting that in for the remainder of the week. And then hopefully that final week I will still be able to do it. We'll still be able to finish Assassin's Apprentice and Master Artificer. There is going to be another round of the Basically Readathon, which is basically a 24-hour readathon, the final weekend of the month. So by that time I should have finished Assassin's Apprentice, and hopefully I can really fully focus in on Master Artificer at that point in time. But we'll have to see. I haven't had a great sort of month so far when it comes to really being in the reading mood. Yesterday is kind of a turning point, so I hope that I continue on with that sort of momentum where I can really put myself through a lot of pages in a day rather than having these sort of like very slow turnaround when it comes to page count on a daily basis, as I've been having so far this month. But so yeah, wish me luck for the remainder of this month, and hope to see you guys for future videos soon. Bye!